Alex, hi. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm really good. I'm really good. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to do the recording. Um, I hope you had a good Easter. Was it a good break?
Indeed, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be allowed to speak at your podcast.
Oh, it's really good to have you. I'm sure we'll see as the show unfolds the little golden nuggets of insight that you've obviously picked up over your career. But no, really excited to kind of cover the topic today. What we're going to discuss for people that just tuning in on this episode is we're going to talk about going from 0 to 1 in the German, Austrian, Switzerland region, so the DACH region. And for people that haven't actually listened to these series of episodes before, I guess the context here is that my name's Simon Gregory. I'm a director of Thornton Gregory. We're a recruitment company that focuses on working with marketing tech, scale up and startup companies. I felt last summer, with all the challenges that we sort of faced in the space, I'd built a really, really great kind of network of people, Alex included, across disciplines, across functions, and across different kind of crazy growth stories within their sort of respective companies. And I wanted to kind of create a series of episodes to kind of unlock some of that insight about their sort of personal stories, and also just about interesting kind of mutual topics, which is obviously what we're doing at this today with Alex. They're going to be around topics like go-to-market leadership, obviously regional stuff like today. I've done some episodes around sales enablement and RevOps, stuff around like growth levers in the current market, which we did with Super Tim, which I think landed quite nicely. So I'm really excited to kind of get your view and perspective on this, Alex. So thanks again for taking the time. Okay. We met maybe what, 5-6 years ago? Is that right?
8
years ago. Oh, blimey. Remember it to the day. That's
I looked it up.
good. I obviously didn't. But look, I mean, we've obviously like known each other for 8 years. You've pretty much, we'll go into it in a minute, but I think you pretty much spent good chunk of your career supporting foreign companies land and expand both revenue and teams within the DACH. So, with really cool kind of, first movers, and, some great companies within that. And I'll let you explain a little bit about that maybe in a minute. But I thought I've worked in the space for 10 years and hired into Germany for most of that. And I've seen some companies really get this wrong, and some companies, struggle to kind of capitalize and hire great people and move the needle within the German speaking market. So I just thought, bringing Alex on today, we're going to try and hopefully give some insight which will help some people that are looking at this region, or considering, the steps that need to be taken to be able to try and unlock some of what is undoubtedly a huge market opportunity. Okay. We split the episode into a couple of themes. Like normal, we'll talk a little bit about your career, a little bit about go-to-market and market dynamics, some hiring insights in there, a little bit about product and AI, and then a bit of fun at the end, or more fun at the end. I keep saying that and people correcting me. More fun at the end about the quick-fire questions. Okay, so without further ado, and the little intro there, but Alex, for people that don't know you and never met you, can you give the listeners a little bit of insight into your career today, a little bit about your story?
I'm happy to. Thank you so much for the intro. I'm Alex, 45 years old. I live in Hamburg. And from the background, I was never planned to end up in sales. So my first step after the school was joining the army. And I was army maintenance officer leading a platoon of 200 people. So a lot of stability and a lot of planning. And then after 12 years, when I left the army, my plan was to become a partner in a consultancy in the long run. So there was always, I want to consult and help doing things. So the last years during my time in the military, I spent a lot around IT security, building out portals. And by many coincidences, I was able to join a consultancy subsidiary of Deutsche Telekom, so quite a big one, and was responsible for collaborating with one of the software as a service vendors based in San Francisco. So there was one sales guy sitting in Bonn, and we were collaborating very closely on big enterprise accounts. And that was my first touch to the world of software, selling software, and the big industry. It was quite, I was back in the days, I was 32, so not so long ago. And that was the time when I did well. I liked this helping people, but also selling at the same time. And the sales individual, the sales director for the software company, he said, you know what, you got to join and become one of those territory managers and join our company, really going into the sales direction. And that was 2012. So now fast forward, I'm now country manager and sales director for mParticle. It's also a software vendor based in New York. And there were some cool stations and steps in between, and some that did not work out. So therefore, it's a bit of a maybe. I think we can talk about in a second what was the qualification criteria that worked out well, and what was the time that did not work out well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, nobody's career is perfectly linear, is it? But obviously, those learnings are kind of part of the reason why we're here today. So, um, in terms of the military background, obviously that's quite unique, I think, to you, Alex. I mean, how do you think that has shaped you as sort of a person and helped you within the kind of the SaaS sales environment?
Well, if you see the big SaaS vendors, most of them are based in the US, and the US has a high affinity to military or to guys in service anyway. But for me, I'm not the guy who's just yes to everything. I'm kind of the guy challenging any decision and want to at least have a word before the decision is taken. That's also a bit how I like to lead. So ask everyone, then get the opinions together, and then make a decision, but then execute on the decision. And this is one thing I learned, and I would say that's a benefit from this background. It's a positive work ethic and being able to prioritize, but also when you have something where you just execute, then it's about getting the team together. Don't question everything and being then on an execution track.
Okay, cool. And in terms of, you mentioned I think you described them as some stations, but in terms of some of those roles and that you've had across maybe the last, I think, 10 years or so that you mentioned within the SaaS space, have you had any mentors or like really influential managers or even people that that really helped with that kind of career development? And if so, like, who would they kind of be and why?
You split mentors and managers. That's quite funny. So I do have I mentioned already one. So Marcus, the guy who brought me into sales, he's still someone we're still in contact. So I'm not in contact with every of my previous managers, but with a lot of. And it's still very intensive times and in particular wins, but losses, they bring you together. So most of them, I have a good relationship. And there are a lot of when you have guys, or like consider a high pace sales environment. You're new to the team, but the expectation is, hey, we need to close 1.5 million. You've not come through an SDR or an inside sales. You're just responsible for an entire territory. Then it's really tough to learn this language about leads, opportunities, the forecasting mechanics, and so on and so forth. So that was a tough one. And there were guys that were helping a lot these days, but there were also the managers. And I will remember this guy who's one of the most most influential people, but he was so hard nobody could like him. And then the company got a coach next to him to calm him a little bit down. But this was so impactful for my career, because I tried to basically copy what he wants to say, or what he wants to have, and how the way how to sell, but not necessarily the way you communicate it. So therefore, it's like both. They're really cool people I met in the industry that are still, and they usually made a real career. It's not easy to copy those people, but to take parts of this. But also some managers was like, well, still is a lot of learning, and the memories are tied to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. And you've obviously taken those learnings into your own style, like of leadership today.
It is in both selling and leadership, and it's somehow connected, I'd say. It is, if you're asking me about the way what I like to sell, it's a bit of this challenging. Some would say there's a little in the Slack feed we're having. You can put in little icons. So there's a little icon with me and a hammer. So I would say I'm kind of those guys who are a bit pushy in sales, but also find the fine tone and the consulting nuances that inspire and share the insights that allow me to, at a time when it's needed, to really put some pressure on the prospects or the customers. But that's kind of what I like
Yeah.
from the sales side.
Yeah. I understand. I think from knowing you as long as I have, I think, the balance of sort of sense of humor and hard work is, I think you've got it pretty, you seem to have it pretty well locked in. Um, okay. Hey, look, I mean, within these episodes, I'd kind of be amiss to not mention that, over the last 12 or 18 months, our space has been in a sort of challenging state. The software space, VC money has kind of slowed down. There's a lot of pressure on buyers. There's a lot of noise in your particular space, but well, CDP space, I should say, but in the Martech in general. My question here is, have you sort of seen that, like, the definition of good growth, has that changed? And if so, like, what does that current kind of look like in 2024?
Mm. That's a good question. So what is good growth? Back in the days, as you mentioned, it was like we throw people in and then burn some money. Now everyone is talking about the rule of 40.
Yeah.
And we now everyone needs to be profitable and reduce the money to a minimum. I think that's for us in particular in the CDP environment, it's tough. So since 10 years, the founder's been talking about combining the customer data and so on and so forth. But no company got acquired and really exploded the investors' wallet. So therefore, for us, it's a bit we are in a situation from burning money into moving a situation where you need to be profitable to be just there for within the next 12 or 15 months or something like this. And for the marketing technology space overall, it's everyone is fighting for the same budgets. The areas are narrowing down to majorly everything is around AI. So it's a bit a very tricky space. And back to your question, to the good growth, it's I think from our German view, being able to spend the money that you have wisely and put it into something which is important. So it puts us under the pressure, seeing things a bit different, leveraging account-based marketing, not throw it out of the fence, being very focused on some assets, but it's a bit of the direction we, as from my German nature, love that anyway.
Yeah. Are you feeling a little bit of a more positive trend in the market if we're just talking about the DACH since last year to this year, or is it still very, very tight?
Then we would need to split the DACH itself. So Germany is, I think, in a very special situation because the macroeconomics are challenging, I'd say. So the major blocks we are having is automotive, a bit of chemicals, and a lot of industrial stuff. So this is slowing down. So there are other vendors on the automotive angle that are really, really growing, like Tesla or some brands from China that are entering the European market. So for us, if you have a good business value, good ROI, a really great use case to go after, it still needs to be balanced on the pricing side, because there is competition, as discussed a bit on this marketing technology part. So there, you're not on a white spot anymore. So this is what you need to consider. And if you can take the risk off the table and put some value on the table, I think that's still it's still a good market. And but it's more that you need to have the proof point to get the investment, and it's more important than ever.
Okay. As it like, I gave you the kind of the intro a little bit earlier, but it's like an experience profile that's done this many times. Like if you were to kind of hypothetically sort of describe the market opportunity across the DAC to a foreign or incoming SaaS provider, in your own words, how would you kind of describe it to them?
Well, cracking, really going into the DACH region, that's basically the first step into continental Europe. And this is still one of the biggest markets, stable markets globally. It is a great opportunity, but you need to understand some habits of us, a bit of strange Germans. So we're not the first movers. In Berlin, there's a huge startup base growing up. So let's take them aside for a second. But it's like, let the others find the errors in the software. Then we will be the guys who go and make money, or put some money on the table and make the investment. So that is kind of a thing. And there's still some things that you need to consider. There are also always the same questions coming up. Is there German-speaking support? Is there a German-speaking documentation? So to make it a bit convenient, but from the opportunity, from the business perspective, it's the third largest economy, maybe going to the fourth largest somewhere, if we're not getting back to growth. But this is just the facts. It's a huge opportunity, and as I said, it's still the core of Central Europe, and the first step where GDPR and all these things are very strictly applied to the vendors, and this gives you a good understanding of how to scale into the other European countries as well.
So you said there about support, and I assume having like a GmbH. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that, how important that is or not, in your opinion, for selling in the region.
Well, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of overcomplicating things. So there are models like remote.com. If you want to move fast and find the right spot, you can put an employment contract in front of an employee and get this done. It's not as a first step. In the midterm, you need to, of course, look at, is the scale, is that going well? Then need to replace that, but this shouldn't stop you from going into the region. There's stuff that is more important. So working with German enterprise companies, let's consider BMW or VW or Deutsche Telekom, whatever you wanna take. It's not that they will say, oh, that's great, we have US terms and conditions and we will accept that. That's not going to happen. So you need to think about understanding and somehow like German law, which is quite different to the US, or having some things, being able to offer something in euro. So this is then the localization component that's much more important than waiting for a GmbH and get this all consolidated. So those guys, they understand that a contracting entity will be in UK or in US. That's all okay. And from the employment side, having something in the middle which makes it easy and allow you to move fast, that's also there. So you shouldn't be too concerned, or the companies shouldn't be too concerned to leverage those things that are there and good practices to move fast.
So there's a balance between, like, there's some building blocks there that are kind of must-haves that you need to have in place. Otherwise, you can't work at that level. And there's some of which that they just accept will come with some scale and some time, I'd imagine. Yeah. Okay, cool. Final question on this one is, whenever I speak to people, obviously the sales resource goes in first normally. And then there's obviously a debate about what comes next, but pre-sales is also something that comes up regularly. How important is it that you have a German-speaking pre-sales resource, in your opinion?
Well, I would challenge the entire go-to-market. So throwing in a single guy, waiting for a miracle to happen, that's a bit what we discussed. So if the structure behind is not right, this individual will A, do the prospecting stuff, and B, consult the company to connect those processes and make them, let's say, localize them for the German market. That's a very difficult situation. I had that just for my current company, when we had the initial calls, and they were also thinking about having one individual sitting in region and then having a little bit of the other folks sitting, maybe over time sitting in region as well, but there was no immediate hiring. So fast forward, we joined as a team of 3. So one is obviously me, being responsible for the sales, but also the overall territory setup. Then a second individual who's responsible for solution consulting, engineering, but also some, I'd say, understanding the customers that are already there and being able to replicate those use cases, or tailor those use cases that allow us to resell them for similar prospects and clients. And a third role that's also very important, that's a partner manager, and we all came as a team, so we would call that a triangle, and that reflects a little bit the approach. For the pre-sales resource in particular, so we Germans love to speak German.
Yeah.
It is in particular speaking, and when you ask technical questions, so everyone's able to read it. So make no mistake, we don't need a translated website. Everyone is able to read it, but don't like, most of the people don't like to speak it. And then when it's getting to nitty-gritty detail, this makes a difference when you have someone who is a bit tech savvy and help tailoring a solution for someone in a mother tongue. That makes a difference.
Okay, cool. That's good. You said a little bit about Berlin and about the automotive space, but my impression is everybody sees the German-speaking market and the enterprise something that moves quite slowly, right? That's not a secret, yeah. And then there's obviously some patience that's needed around that. But conversely, are there any kind of market segments or types of business or even verticals that are really like early adopters to this type of technology?
It depends a bit on the technology. So
Okay.
as there's always early adopters in the market, you just need to find them. That's a bit the challenging stuff. But as you mentioned, so looking at Germany, it's split into 2 big parts. So it's the big enterprises, the Volkswagens, the BMWs, but then the strong founder-owned or family-owned mid-sized companies. Some of them would say, let's build a digital unit and see how this grows. So working with them, that can be quite exciting. There's also this big startup base, as mentioned. So primarily in my mind, it's Berlin where you build this up, and it's also very international. Brands like who is a Delivery Hero, HelloFresh, those guys, Trade Republic, a unicorn. So this is then where you need to look at and really need to find the entry point or the timing as well with the right solution to being able to get them on board. But yes, there are. I'd not go after the big elephants at the same time as an individual and try to knock them down.
So it's a split approach, yeah. You're obviously
Correct.
trying to find those. Yeah, obviously. Okay, cool. um, the German-speaking market, DACH, Austrian, Switzerland. If we focus on those for a moment, what's your experience of selling into those regions? Like, tell us a little bit about your insight into kind of the customer base there and cultural kind of challenges and opportunities, please.
Happy to. So the Swiss market is obviously driven by the huge banks. This is one big asset, or the insurance part of that. And with that, the market is very much, they're very aligned to the UK. So in
Okay.
parts of looking at entry points, Swiss is a really good spot. So they might be able to move faster than some of the German big brands. That's a great option to look at this. Austria, that's a very interesting market as well. So this is, I don't want to say a closed community, but it's a bit of, they don't necessarily need me as a German guy telling them what good is, so that they would say, well, you're an external, why? So it's a bit of even, once you crack it, it's massive. So there are massive brands, in particular the entry point into the Eastern European market, where historically everything is from Vienna to Hungary or to Austria, and Hungary is so connected, and there's a lot of business right there. You need to then look at Vienna and open this up, but this takes a little bit longer, and is not necessarily the fast moving part.
And are they, from a strategy perspective, somebody that's looking at this, the DACH region, is it best to look at Germany first, or is it sensible to look at the whole of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland as a kind of addressable market? Nice mug, by the way, there. I like that. Good. But yeah, I mean, my point is clearly resources are fairly thin on the ground normally. Is it sensible to look at all of these regions, or do you try and pick your battles?
Well, honestly, that's the reason why you bring guys like me or similar on board. So it's you make a strategic decision. We want to approach and scale the business into a foreign spot and start building out a team in DACH. So it is, you can't say let's start in Germany or in Austria. It's more about what is the solution looking like. Is that tailored to whatever, retail or to finance, or is it to automotive? What's the right starting point? What is the right message? So, or the ICP in nowadays world that you can replicate. And then it's also about the connections that you're having. Historically, when I might call some guys at big sports companies and say, can you get me a meeting, yes or no? And when you have the trust and can get then a foot in the door, they recommend you to someone else to speak to the right individual. Then it's about the right account plans that you as account executive, and that's also what I want from my folks, to have that at hand and say, this is where we look at, this is where the connections are, this is where I have the partner has a connection and had the entry point, that we align on this, and not necessarily from the HQ saying, well, from over the seas, we have an idea, we want to win this customer. That doesn't work.
Okay. You mentioned yourself, you said that there's no doubt Germany's got a huge economy and opportunity there. I think, third largest economy you mentioned, I think behind US and China. Companies obviously see that, and with rose tinted glasses, we've already said that there's challenges to that market, right? But are there any consistent themes that companies do well in that region, that there are any consistent things that they get in place early on or do well that make them successful?
It's a bit what I talked about earlier. So you need to have the patience and the willingness to really say yes to this endeavor. There's some things that we don't have here. Quarters. it's irrelevant. So if you're thinking about within 2 quarters, we want to do 2 things or whatever, accomplish number XYZ, that's a bit difficult. So Germans, they have fiscal years and no quarters. So it's not an element of pressure that you put in front of a procurement fellow. It is also the behavior is a bit different. So usually no one ties his career to I'm implementing this software and then I get promoted. That might be a US thing, but it's not here. So if you have this patience and say, okay, we'll look at this, we'll have the value, we're clear on this kind of surrounding setup, legal documents, this Euro stuff, understanding a bit it's more about the connection on many angles, so on many areas from the VP level down to even the developer. They have a voice. So if you can make that right and have the patience, then you are set up for success. There's obviously one thing that bit of where people are afraid, it's this GDPR thing. It's like, the other one is like Schrems 2 or 3. It's like, what is the next one coming up? Can we still make contracts with US? So this needs to be, you need to have an opinion, but also for us, we need to understand the mechanics as the individuals who help the prospect and the vendor to get together and consult properly that you're able to get this done and mitigate the pain on both sides. So it's quite doable, but again, it's the patience, and it's not this like within this 7 months we want to see where's the business, and then you pull down. Most of the time, you then come to the wrong conclusion. It's just a sales guy. They're not performing. If you see the rest of the numbers that are fine, then you should really stick and see to move little bit longer and trust the individuals you have on board to get the brands on board.
And then is it as kind of binary as that? Is once these brands start with the patients, when they start to sign, is it a bit of a snowball effect, like that trust
Yes.
within the market?
Yes.
Like so clearly that kind of wait is worthwhile for companies.
Yes. I remember a lot of conversations when we put in reference calls for big guys here, and we brought in, I don't know, half US to have reference calls, 3 or 4. It was really weird. And so after every call, we got the feedback like, no, they are not relevant for us. This is like that different, and this is the biggest difference ever. And the next one was the same. And then we brought in one German company. This is their understanding. They're based in Germany. So this is a bit the theme. Yes, you like that more. So to open up, it's a bit tricky. But then with 1, 2, 3 brands, you'll be able to really scale that region when you're having the right team on board and the right focus.
Case studies is king then. Okay, indeed. Cool. The like we mentioned there about the opportunity and companies, some themes about doing stuff well. I also see a lot of companies clearly not do what you've just said and just fail, for want of a better word. Like, what are there any kind of key themes apart from obviously the counter what you've said, like for that reason, or share a little bit of insight there?
Well, it's so usually you need to understand when is that demand coming. You saw a ton of inbound stuff coming. There might be one customer converted, one big brand here, and then you say, well, let's approach that territory strategically, right? So pipeline is one. When I joined, I did some cool moves. I said joined some companies which should have been qualified a little bit better by myself, but most of the time is when you opened up Salesforce and saw the pipeline that has been created by a previous rep or that has been handed over, that was not a solid one that brought me anywhere. So usually I put it all to close lost and then started to create my own. So that is then the perception that's kind of, well, here's $1 million of pipeline, you just need to execute. No. And there's another one. We have one customer that's now, we are already there. No. this is something in the middle where you then need to connect the dots and not have this after 7 months, where's the here's only pipeline, so let's move away, must be the account executives. That's the only thing where I need to where I ask everyone to be a little bit patient, and look at this much more precise and say, are we ready on, have we set up everything in the meantime? Do we connect to some kind of, in our space, it's connecting data from a source to an endpoint? Do we have the connectors for those local networks that are around? Which are those local vendors? We've not even seen them on a global scale. So if you can't meet that on a functional level, that's quite tricky. This is also a question. Then the legal stuff, as mentioned and stressed a little bit, but this is kind of a thing. So be careful just changing people because of this. As you said, the big enterprises are known for moving slow. So then changing someone who just opened the conversation and has that trusted relationship is not helping in that sale. It might, just cancel the opportunity to get that over the hurdle.
Okay. It seems to me like data security, compliance, culturally, and within the German-speaking market, it seems really, really important.
Yep.
What's your kind of view on that, and why is it so important?
Well, as I said, there's this kind of confusion, and I had that a couple of times. Oh, you're a US vendor, we can't make a contract with you. It's like, hold on a second. There were standard contractual clauses, and there's now some kind of agreements between Europe and the US, which might be challenged in the midterm. But this is some things where we as local guys need to speak this and understand that language and understand the challenges and do some consultancy on the prospect and customer side, but also having the true understanding on the vendor side to bring this together. There's also for GDPR is quite simple. So it's like in the US you would say we'll send out mass email blasts. Well, in our region, we don't do that. So there needs to be the interest, it needs to be one-on-one and all the stuff. It is simple, but we just need to understand it. And if you have an open ear on the other side, that might be truly helpful to then find a strategy and a tactic to send something out and collect for whatever the double opt-in that you can send something out at a similar scale.
Do you find the majority of companies that are looking to kind of come into the market just aren't aware of that, or don't do it, or are fairly well equipped?
The smaller ones are, they have a great idea, but when it comes down to the details, that's still, okay, we have a database, we'll send out an email newsletter. No, we have not considered about the double opt-in. Yeah, then we don't send out newsletter. That's then just a fact. So it is, so some did consider parts of that, put the investment on the table, but it's just then a thing of setting the expectations right.
Getting the foundations right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Obviously, the startup space in Hamburg and Berlin is very, very multinational, multicultural, which is great. Contributes to the startup scene. We talked a little bit about Germans selling to Germans in German, right? What's your kind of opinion for new technology companies coming into the market, and how important that is, or can they actually, depending on the tech, be successful with a non-native speaker?
Well, you can if you find the right counterparts inside of the companies. It's doable, but I recommend to find someone local with also this connection to the other local parties that you need in a sale. So whether it's a partner, someone just here having the trust, having done this before. So it is usually would say you need a German. So there's also an observation I'd say I have. When I started my career in software sales, it was all about we need to find a spot in Frankfurt. It was mainly Frankfurt and surrounding. That's changed a bit. It's now Frankfurt, Munich, and or Berlin. That's quite interesting. So my perception is I want to have, you know, just turn the view a little bit, the perspective. So I'm a German-based company, and I want to go to the US. I'll find the right guy, whether this guy sits in Atlanta or in Florida or in New York or San Francisco. I don't know the region. I would not make a limitation on the city where I want to be based. So for us, there's a group of 85 million German-speaking people within Germany. It's then easier to find someone who's fluent than somewhere outside of Germany. But where this individual is based on the skilled profile, I don't know. And you know, it's split, the business split across those major cities: Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt, Stuttgart, maybe Hamburg, Cologne area anyway. So then the local component, it's just irrelevant as long as it's somewhere within Germany.
Okay, cool. Hiring across the German-speaking market is notoriously difficult for foreign companies, long notice periods, many other reasons, right? Are there any tips as an A player, you know, as you are, right? Are there any tips that you would give to people looking to hire those particular profiles within region?
You're much more into this. So the only thing, good people want to work with good people. I think that's an obvious thing. You just want to be surrounded that you feel you can build something and really scale it, make it more valuable. So that's one thing that people will call or motivate others to join when they're happy. That's one thing, but it's you know, you've been doing this for much more intensive than I do, and that's don't listen to my advice there.
Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, to kind of anecdotally or distill what we've been talking about there, it's obviously making sure that you're seen to be serious about the market, I'd imagine. Yeah. As a foreign vendor, it's about, you know, setting up the right infrastructure. It's about, you know, making sure the data compliance and security aspects are being considered. Yeah. And obviously looking at the, you know, the amount of time that you're willing to give these people to be able to actually, you know, go from 0 to 1 or whatever success looks like. As you said before, some of the smaller companies probably need a bit of education around that. But I think that's probably, if you were to push that back to me, that's probably how I would answer that question. You personally, key characteristics when assembling kind of high performing teams like you've been involved with in the past. What do you look for certain things in people? And if you do, what are they?
So it's now the first time that I'm allowed to build the team as I want it, which is kind of with the guidance of the company, of course. But there's one observation I have. So selling has never been easy, but it's getting more complex. So we need to battle against the other vendors, and there's a lot of things that you need to bring to the table when you meet the customer the first time. They did a lot of research, and you need to really understand what this is all about, how this entire ecosystem works, what your little component makes in that big puzzle, and how this helps the customer. And so it's very much about consulting but selling at the same time. So it's a hybrid thing. So I love people who have this kind of the spirit of really want to go after something and accomplish something. So most of them, you would say in the sales environment, it's like, oh, I want to earn some money and sell something, but at the same time is this fine tone of helping, of showing this help to the customer, having the smartness of doing something. This is what I personally love, because it creates new things, new themes, new sales pitches that can be replicated across the team and makes the team a bit stronger.
Okay, cool. Probably be a little bit amiss again of not mentioning AI, you know, as it's such a big sprawling topic in in the world, not even in the space. But I think, am I right to say your guys, mParticle, they made some investments or some acquisitions in the space? Or but how do you see that? How do you see AI and even machine learning sort of impacting the work that you do in the CDP space in general?
Funny that this AI stuff is going through the roof. So it's been around for such a long time. And the latest movement is coming from this generative AI stuff, so around
Yeah.
ChatGPT, and everyone is using that. So I see it super important and also as a huge benefit for my daily business. So getting me drafts for posts, automate some stuff that's here, awesome. That's really awesome. Having summaries, of course, all the stuff, that's really great. For you mentioning the CDP space, there we need to think a little bit about what a CDP is and the definition itself. But first of all, going back to the data component that gets into a CDP or any kind of combined CDP with a lakehouse or a data warehouse-centric architecture and the CDP upon of that, we need to have consented data, in particular in our region. So in our region, going to California, there's also some regulations on data, so you better be compliant on CCPA as well. So it's about having consented data to not have garbage in a model and get garbage out of the model. That's a great thing, and this has been around for some time. For the CDP space in particular, it's combining this predictive AI components on the individual, because there's not so much on generative. It's more about what's my likelihood to do something, which is which is called then predictive AI, and we have a great solution and indeed acquired a company on that one to extend that. On the CDP basis, this combined with something in an Adobe ecosystem where you can generate images and all that stuff, then you have consented data that you can feed into those generative AI components, and they can build some content around of that. But there's a lot of confusion, and for us in the region, I think it's important to do the basics by now. Collect the data, have the consent, store them, and then make them available and apply the right mechanics and the right AI component to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We joked off camera a little bit about, I think I've asked this to a few different people in the CDP space. I mean, maybe that's just a sign of the people I've got to know over the years and the space that I work in. But you've spent quite a good amount of time both at your previous company and obviously the current company, mParticle. How have you seen this space change, and how do you see kind of the future state of the CDP space?
Well, it's the third company. The first,
Third company. Yeah.
the third one. The first one is now part of Salesforce, and there was always like, we're CDP, we're CDP.
Of course.
That was a very, very interesting one, and they are all a little bit different, I must say. So from my perspective, it is incredibly hard to say what, in particular, when you ask the external, when you take the external guidance. So Gartner just recently launched the first ever Gartner report on CDP. So there were 190 vendors evaluated, and I think 17 got put into the Gartner quadrant. So that means what's with the other 90%? Are they not relevant, or are they not a CDP? That's a good question. And the quadrant itself got challenged by the community so much because Salesforce was on the upper right position, and everyone said, what are they doing in this quadrant? So it's a really, really, really challenging spot. So if you ask me, I try to avoid the term CDP at all and think about what is the business challenges and the use cases a company is looking at. Is it about having one profile of a consumer they want to serve some relevant content to, then putting this identity building out a customer 360 for real-time activation purposes across the channels, and then putting this identity together, doing some enrichments on the profile, and moving into a one-on-one personalization. Maybe that's called then a CDP, but it's truly tricky. So from the themes that we are seeing, and I touched on this a bit earlier, so you see that there's some movements to a data warehouse, lakehouse centric architecture. So guys like Snowflake, Databricks, even the GCP or the AWS folks, they're pushing for their this central components, and then the CDP could be considered, let's say, a UI component upon of that people like you and I can put some messaging out for a consumer and not necessarily put in SQL or JavaScript code on a platform to do something with it, but with the idea to interact with the customer, have a single set of data. And we as technology vendors need to ensure that it all is tied up properly, and the set of data is accurate, that can be used for activation components. So, and then the big themes, you would say that you're moving to holistic journeys and one identity handling when the cookies entirely disappearing, that you still get this together. Or it's a bit the data democratization element and monetization. So how do we do that? How can we set this up? So those are the things that are also relevant for the CDP space. But from my perspective, it's one central component that needs to nicely interact with those other data initiatives that are going around in the company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I saw the internet basically blew up when that Gartner report got launched. It went absolutely mad.
Yeah, it didn't help.
I guess from somebody that's kind of has been featured in that and worked for, as you say, the CDP that's featured in Salesforce or part of that, do you find that that has really damaged the kind of credibility, or do you feel that the buyers of the software still take a lot of notice of that report?
Well, being around in the space for quite a while, there was some. Previously, it was the CDP Institute who was with the North Star giving guidance and some Forrester stuff in APJ. But it's the CDP Institute carved out four categories of a CDP. And even those categories were a little bit like, oh, wait a second. They should all connect to and be, highly integrated, that someone who's in category 4 covers everything of category 1. So that's more theoretical approach than the reality. What you see now is that you're comparing some of those categories where the real-time component is somehow there, but bit of not the dominating component, with something where it's real time, and you put it in the same quadrant and compare apple with bananas. It's like, what is that? That is, I think, the biggest challenge. And so at the end, it's about there's a group of vendors in it, and then it's about finding the right use cases and the right value cases that you challenge the vendors with, and not necessarily the big guys that are, for whatever reason, in a corner where we would really doubt that this is the right math and calculation applied to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Let's move on then. So, like the events. I mean, I've been over to Mexico and we've met each other at OMR and there's lots of others in between. I guess this question's aimed at the limited resource aspect of not being able to go to everything and anything anymore, right? Have you got a view or a strong opinion on which are the kind of must go to events, and if so, what are they and why?
My opinion on that one, as we spoke about it, I don't like those exhibitions. So sometimes it feels like a university anniversary or something like this, where you meet all the sales fellows and say, oh, what are you doing? Are you hiring or not? So then that's not about really proper lead generation or but it's also a balance. So you want to show up because some of the customers or prospects will be there, at least the mid managers who will be around. So the high level executives who sign the contract they will usually not be showing up at an OMR or Demexco or similar. So the money is well spent. And if you don't have so much of money, then with really focused events, maybe a dinner, maybe where you have one voice, one thought leader, one customer talking about the benefits, and inviting the right group of people that they can connect. But it's also what resonates very well is you just connect them and don't come up with this presentation, but send some stuff and connections afterwards. So I'm not the biggest friend of having big booths at those events, but of course I will be around and having just a visitor ticket for the OMR and the DMExco, and are open for handshakes. And if someone is interested in a CDP, just drop me a little line so we can, of course, having a coffee at the OMR in Hamburg.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. So you're saying it's something to be attending to for sure, but dropping, I don't even know what those stands cost, but tens or maybe 50,000 euros on a huge stand, in your opinion, is maybe not a great kind of return on investment based on
Correct.
the audience. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess you mentioned there about the dinners or private events. I assume that kind of bleeds into that kind of trust, or building that trust with a common audience or prospect audience, like for like accounts. Is that the angle you're coming at that from?
No, I think that's what's more a motivational aspect. So if I tell you, Simon, I have a great idea, you can meet me with 10 of others, but most importantly, it's me and my company messaging, and then you can have a dinner. It's like, oh, when I tell you, you can meet the industry peers that are doing likes for like you, and you can exchange, and I promise not to bother you. So which route do you want to
Yeah.
go and join? So you will allow me afterwards sending you an email and the content, that maybe gives the feedback, and be curious what I do and how I can support you. But I don't necessarily, I want to deliver something of meaning to you first and then ask for something in return. That's the only thing.
I see. Totally. So it's that value exchange, right? And it's
Correct.
not the hard sell. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Um, we have done, and we are going to do more sort of episodes specifically around this. But tell me a little bit more about the importance of channel partnerships and alliances within the German speaking market.
Well, I would say it's a general theme everyone should think about. So the partners, the service companies, they know about projects before any vendor knows about it. So that's just a nature of a thing, that you need to get close to them. Guys like Microsoft or other companies, they were able to leverage real reseller bases, and those, that they just scaled with having those partners, these local ones. Not thinking about it is that's not good. Just there's one thing. If you just look at the big ones, that's a bit a tricky one. So they have, let's stay for, I don't know, Deloitte, PwC, the Accentures. They have those. They're global companies, but nevertheless they have local groups that might collaborate together, but not necessarily at a global scale. So saying, well, we have Accenture US as a partner, and now we expect that in somewhere in Central Europe something's happening, that might be difficult. So to find the right partner setup, with even the boutique partners and the more mid-sized SIs that are in Germany, that's crucial. So to open up, I don't know, 20, 30% of the lead flow coming from those partners, then in the background you can build and optimize the flow coming from marketing and the effort over there. That's also 30% coming from the leads coming from those efforts. And this is kind of the mechanics. So from my perspective, it's incredibly important to work with those partners, to help them understand what you can do for their customers. And it's not that you expect them to sell. So that's the North Star. Like I mentioned with Microsoft, they will sell your licenses, but at the first step, it's like, what is in for them? Why should they care? Because there's some benefit that they can put in front of their customers, and that is kind of a bit of change how to think about it. Yeah, but it's almost about a third of the lead contribution, so therefore you need to think about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, uh, you've done some great things, but as you've covered before, you've also seen some, made some mistakes, like any
Yeah.
senior person, right? If you were to kind of wind the clock back a little bit, or talk to any new sales or revenue leader that's coming into them, or starting a role in the German-speaking market, that's currently watching and got this far, 1 hour in, what advice would you give them?
I can only give you my very personal advice, and that's then also the me. It's a bit, be more patient. So sometimes, in particular, coming from a background where I had the responsibility for training platoons to Afghanistan and get them home safely, it's like, hey, I want to be in my leader's role. Where is it? But sometimes it's about the patience, it's the time, it's the moment, and that is a thing where I need to consistently need to improve on. Um, if there's a good opportunity, if there's a good chance to move into this high-paced environments, um, being allowed to scale something, challenge the company. If it's about being the first or second man on the ground, is that set up properly? If that's not set up properly, step aside. So they will find someone and call a year later and then listen to you to set it up properly. But have the patience and the confidence, and then you'll be successful.
Great. And then just on the topic of up and coming talent, the thirst for learning, are there any kind of resources or communities or things that you would point them to help them with that kind of, that knowledge?
There's three things. So I do believe that sharpening your sword on a regular basis, an hour or two a week, is super important. So that one is obviously about sales itself. So it's changing. Um, there's great books around. Not all are great, but when you're able to think about those frameworks and how they interact together and take the swords out, take the best for you out, that's one thing. Um, a lot of my colleagues, they are in this pavilion community, and I said,
Yeah.
is that great? And everyone said yes. So I've not signed up, but I want to. And I am also in this, for me personally, in a ID 360, it's called. It's in a leadership community, and those are the ones that I do. But most important, and that's a bit of the hobby, is about this sales, just how is it developing. And you will find most of the current books that are around, and the great books that from the past, in my cupboard, that were just because it's super important and interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Look, that's the sort of finish of the questions. Like is normal within these episodes, Alex, we just got a couple of quick fire questions that we want to kind of fire at you. So not too much thought around this. And the first first answer that comes into your head is just to kind of get to know you. I always say a bit of fun, and then probably more fun. But the favorite piece of tech or app that you are using at the moment?
The app, Sudoku.
Okay. iOS or Android?
iOS.
Yeah, okay. Night at the disco or night at the restaurant?
Restaurant,
Okay. Favorite food?
any kind of barbecue.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Matrix.
Lovely. If you were to describe yourself in 2 words, what would it be and why?
uh, um, uh, old kid.
Okay, fine. Favorite place that you visited on holiday or just visited in your life?
Um, a favorite place, so it's Mallorca.
Okay, cool. Um, Guilty pleasure? If so, what is it?
Uh, what is a guilty pleasure? It's having a glass of wine far too often.
Okay. Caveat that at the end. Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, look, that was good fun. Hopefully there's some, interesting insight there that's, unraveled within those questions. For anybody that like wants to kind of, tap into that a bit further or just get to meet you or know you a little bit better, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
For me, it's reach out on LinkedIn, Alexander Willkommen. So you'll find me right there. Just send a connect request. Would really a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, when this goes live in a few weeks, what we'll do is we'll tag you in it and obviously put some contact details in there as well. But hey, great. Thanks for being a great sport and taking the hour to record today. And let's catch up soon.
Thanks so much.